Hello and welcome to lecture 11 coding demo. So in this coding demo, we are going to create React form and do the form validation using control input by using the useState hook. Okay, and then we are going to also use regular expression for doing the form validation. Okay, so I'm going to show you that what will be look like that the things that we're going to do here. So we have the name field and the password field. This is that if I want to send this one, and then it says username must be at least 6 characters long and username must be only lowercase letter and digit. So let's say that if I write 6 character. Okay, so this is satisfied, but now the password has these requirements. Okay, so let's say that if I write some password here and then said, okay, you need to add some special character, which I did not add yet. So if I add a special character, now I said we also need an uppercase. Let's say that I add an uppercase character and says also you need to add some digits. Okay, so if I add the digit, now you see that form will go to here, so which we set as a form action. So it will go to zybooks.com formviewer.php. So this is basically an education purpose server which actually extract the form um, request field and then just display. Okay, so this is basically what I sent. So you see that here we have the validation, right? So until your requirement is fulfilled, the form will not be submitted. And then the other thing is that it also generates the error as soon as you try to send, and then it shows that what is the error in there. Okay, so we're going to create this thing from the scratch. So we'll do this one. We'll start from the React template. So if I copy this address, okay, and this address will be given to in the video description. Okay, so you copy that, and now we're going to clone it. Okay, so let's go to here. Okay, so we're going to create a new repository here. So write cd. And then now we set the, inside the React, now we write git clone, and then this is my address, and then I want to write React form validation. So that will be my repository name. So now here we have the React form validation. Let's go inside. So write cd React form validation. React form validation. Yeah. So here we have cloned this one. So let's open our app.js. Okay, so that's it. Now install our dependencies by writing npm and install. It should install the dependencies based on the JSON file, and then we write npm start. Okay, so now this is our starting, right? So now we are going to add all these things to create a form and then doing all the form validation. Okay, so let's get started. So here I'm going to create a new component, and then I will link that component to the app component. So let's say that we give a name to this component as form validation. Okay, so we need to create this component. So let's go to source. Inside the source, we create a repository. Okay, the repository name is components. Inside the components, create a file. File name is form validation.js JavaScript file. Okay, now create a function here. Say function form validation, and then function will have a return statement. Inside, we write a fragment symbol, and then we export this function as default. Okay, and now we are going to call this one. So let me close this one. Okay, so inside here we need to import it, right? So import form validation is coming from the components. Okay, so we are linked, and then we can just check that this one is working. So let's say that we write h2, so let's say that user information. Okay, so if you see that this one is linked up and which is right. Okay, so now we'll work in this component. Okay, so first of all we need to import the use state because we need to initialize our input. So we write import use state from React. Okay, and now here are a couple of, so we'll create username and password field. So let's initialize them. So that constant user name, and we write set user name, and then we say use state initialize to empty string. Okay, so now I'm just copy this and say user password. Okay, password set user password, and then we said initialize to empty. Okay, now use the React hook for the username and password requirements. Okay, so write constant user name requirements. Okay, and then we say set username requirements. Okay, and then write useState. And since this is an object, so let's write the object symbol, and then we can initialize this. What are the fields that we want? Say the one field is long enough. Okay, and then we initialize to true, and then we say so it should be a lowercase, right? So lowercase and digits, right? So right, and digits. Okay, so we'll say lowercase and digits, so that's we also set as true. Okay, so that's our initialization for the username requirements. And then similar kind of things we are going to do for password. Okay, so password, there will be 4 requirements. So write constant, um so write user password requirements, and then we write set user password requirements. Okay, and then we say useState, and then we write our uh, object property and the value. Okay, so we'll say long enough is true initially, and then we'll say digit, right, is a digit. There should be at least one digit, right? And then we'll say is uppercase, is upper, at least one uppercase, we'll say initially true, and then is special. Okay, SPECIL is true. So these are my requirement for password, that it should be 8 characters long, it should be at least contain one digit, contain at least one uppercase, and at least one special character. Okay, for password it should be at minimum 6 character long, and then only contain lowercase letters and digits. Okay, so these are my requirements, right? Now we will create a function to check that that requirement is fulfilled. Okay, so whether the username requirements is fulfilled or not, right? So we will create a function called function um, say username valid or not, right? That's what we're going to. So it's basically this function will return a true or false. Okay, so that the username is, so based on this and then password validation, we will say that whether the form will submit or it will just generate the error. Okay. So username valid, what we are going to do in username valid, so we need to check that these requirements are fulfilled or not, right? So this is my username value, right? So we'll create an object here. Okay, so you write constant user name. Okay, so username um okay, condition. Let's say that username condition whether it's checked or not. Okay, so this is your objects, and then there will be, these are the property, right? So long enough and lowercase. So this will be my username condition property. Okay, and now the true or false will be decided by the what is the username value is. Okay, so username, so that's my username, and then username will be checked here. Okay, so you say that whether the username is dot length is greater than or equal to 6. So if this is true, then it will return assign true value here. Okay, now we'll say digits, right? So we'll say we need to write a regular expression here. So we write a regular expression that it should be only upper lowercase a to z or 0 to 9. And then we also want this one at the starting, which is the caret symbol, and then it can be one or more, and then it also should be at the end, so which is the dollar sign to represent the end. And then also this regular expression should be checked against the um, username, whatever the current username that's user entered. Okay, and then this condition, if this is true, okay, the test function is written true, then you assign true. Okay, now this is the username condition, so whatever that is, and then this one we're going to write set username and then pass this object. Okay, so that's we update the set username. Okay, so with the set username, um, we'll update the username. Okay, now okay, so okay, so this is basically we're going to update this one. Okay, set username requirements. Okay, so we need to write set username requirements. Okay, so set username requirements will be updated. Okay, set username requirements will be updated by this object. Okay, whatever the object current situation is. Now we also want to return that whether the username is valid or not. So it basically depends on that if both of them are true, right? So we write uh, username condition dot long enough if it is true, and username condition dot lowercase digits also true, need to be true. Okay, so if both of them are true, then this function will return true, otherwise is false. Okay, so this one is done. Now we need to do the same thing for the password. Okay, so we'll check that for password. So we'll write function uh, user password valid. Okay, we are checking whether it's valid or not. Okay, so now here let's create an object user password condition, and then here is my object. So this object will have four properties, the password requirements. So these are the four properties. So we'll set here. So we'll check whether the password is long enough. So what is the password value is, so user password, we need to check under against user password. Okay, so let's say that whether user password dot length is greater than or equal to 8, sorry, 8. then it will return true. And then we'll also do the regular expression here. So whether is digit, so write digit is 0 to 9. So this one will be check against the user password. Okay. Now is upper, so we'll write the regular expression here, and then we write uppercase, so A to Z dot test, and then user password. Okay. Now special case, special character, we'll check the another regular expression here. So you write at and then hash pound and this percentage. Okay, so this, I mean, you can give whatever the special case you want to require. Okay, so I'll just give this for, and then write user password. Okay, so now what we are checking that whether this is true based on this condition, if this is true based on this condition, this is true based on this condition, this is true based on this condition. Okay, and this thing will be set in the user password requirement function, set user password requirement. Okay, so say set user password requirements and then set this object. Okay, so this is the object actually check the condition and then it has the recent value. Now after that we are going to return this, all the four things should be true if you want to return true. So write dot long enough should be true, and dot is digit should be true. Okay, and this one is upper should be true, and is special should be true. Okay, so let's see that. Okay, we have long enough, is digit, is upper, and is special. So all of them should be true, then only this function will return true. Okay, so we have this two function. Now we will create handle submit. Okay, so the handle submit is basically when you click the submit button. Okay, so we can define this one here. Function handle submit, and then let's say that you send the event, and then we will do the event dot prevent default based on this condition. Okay, so let's say check if. Okay, so we have username valid. Okay, so if this is false, okay, so username valid is false, so that means it's not true. Or user password values is not true. Okay, if either of them is not true, if either of them not true, then we'll say we are not going to uh, submit the form. So right, event dot prevent default. Okay, that's the function. So if either of them is not true, then the form will not be submitted. Okay, so I think we are pretty much in a good shape. Now let's go and create our form. Okay, so let's create a form. So form, and then form on submit. Okay, on submit we will write handle submit, and then action, what the action will do. So action will send a request to https wp.zybooks. So this is just a server, zybooks wp.zybooks.com form here, just to see that what we are submitting, form here.php. Okay, so I hope this is the address. So I can see from my slide to just for verification purpose that this is the address, uh, wp.zybooks.com folio.psp. Okay, so this is the address we are going to send, and then we can say that method we are going to use is post method. Method is post, and then the another attribute you can write target. So target attribute is that attribute that will create a new page, a new web browser window, okay? So that it does not open in the parent window. Okay, so that's our form. Now inside the forms, you need to create two input field, right? One is the username, another one is the user password. Okay, so let's create them. So we write input, right? Input, and we say input type is text. So this is the username. Okay, input type is text, and then placeholder will be say John 123 because it can be a lowercase later and then digit. Okay, and then we'll say, so if you want to give a level, right? So say level, say username, and then we can bind this one by the for tag, so which is HTML4, and then we write user name, and then we need to write here the ID should be the same, so we write user name. And since we are going to send in the form, send the form input to the server, so we also need to write the name field is whatever the name field you want to write. Okay, so name field, ID field, placeholder, and then let's say the value we register to here user name. Okay, so that's our username. We should register to this one or empty string. Okay, and then on change, if you change anything on this field, so there will be um, a callback function where we basically set the username. So we'll call this function set username, um, and then here we're going to write e dot event dot target dot value. Okay, so I think this is it for the one field, right? We also need to handle the error message, right? Okay, we also need a button inside the form. Okay, so let's put this one inside this input inside a tag. So let's say that we put this one inside a p tag. Okay, the whole thing inside a p tag. Let's say that if you want to give an indentation here. Okay, and then we'll create a button here. Button type is submit, and then button name is send. Okay, now the other thing is that we also need to do the error handling, right? So these are the two error can happen, right? So let's say that it's not long enough, and also it's not lowercase digits or not, right? So we can see username requirements. Okay, so we'll say that username requirements. So here we're going to write our error. Okay, just write after this form. So it's a username requirements dot long enough is not true. So that means if this is false, Then we are going to return this one. Okay, so we write a span tag, and inside the span tag we are going to write username must be username must be uh, at least 6 characters, 6 characters long. Okay, so that's the one thing, and we'll also do the others. So username requirements. So this is for whether the digits, lowercase and digits. So username must be lowercase, lowercase letters and digits. Okay, so that's the that's our one input, right? So if you want to see that how it is going on, so if I click send, it said username tag space is, I'm going to, if you mean to render React component start with name with an uppercase letter, the text spec. Okay, what is that one? Span. Okay, so we need to write span, not the spec. Span. Okay, so let's see. So username must be at least 6 characters long. So if you want to submit, and then username must be okay. So okay, we need to format this one, okay, using CSS. Now if I write this at least 6 characters long, okay, so that means this is fine because we also need to do the others, otherwise it will not submit the form. Okay, but at least I see that I need to do some CSS. If I do here, you see that it shows here. Let's say that we want to show in here, and then we want to write in 2 different lines. So we need to work with the CSS. So let's say that we give a class name as error, and then same here, class name is error. Okay, now to the CSS for error class, so we'll do React form validation. Okay, so we are write dot error, and then we write say color, we want to make it as red. Okay, and then display, say block display. Okay, now let's see. So yeah, that's fine. So show this, and then now say at least 6 characters long, right? So we do this, and now there's no error. Okay, so that's fine. Now we also need to do the other one, which is so we'll create, let's say that I'll just take this one. Okay, so hold this one maybe to make it just faster. So I'll just take this one, and then we'll say this one is level HTML for user password. Say I'll keep the name as password, and then we'll say this is type field is password instead of text. ID is user password, name is user password, and then there should be no placeholder for password field. And then here we want to give this variable that we initialized, which is user password. Okay, so user password will be, value should be registered in here, okay, or empty, and then on change it will go to there. Okay, so that's our input for oh, okay, I need to change in here. Okay, So let's see, username. Okay, so I need to change in here user password. Okay, user password, and then set user password. Okay, so user password will be updated. I just want to make sure that this function name is set user password and user password. Okay, now we need to see user password requirements. Okay, so these are my error handling condition. User password requirements, so we have long enough, and then must be password must be at least 8 characters long. Okay, 8 characters long. So that's the user password requirements. Okay, so let me copy this one, and then say user password requirements, and then dot is digit. So if it is digits, so we write password must be password password must contain must contain at least at least one digit, right? So this is digit. Okay, so now we need to do this thing for 2 times. One is for is upper, right? Is upper, and then password must contain at least one uppercase character, and then one last for the special. So user password requirement is special, and then password must contain at least one special character from, say, this list, right? From here, 1 2 3 4. Okay, so these four. So this is the error handling for password field, ID, value, user password. Okay, so now we check. Okay, and then handle submit will say user password, and user password here is defined. Okay, so let's see now. Okay, so if I try, said password must be one digit. Okay, digit, one uppercase, one special symbol. Okay, so why now we need to submit the form. Okay, let's see the form. Username valid. So I got the error here. It's basically instead of user password condition, I wrote user password valid. So I wrote the function name. So that was the problem. So I just changed here, instead of user password valid, I wrote user password condition dot long enough user password condition is digit. Okay. So now it should be fine. So we can check. So here we wrote username condition dot long enough. So that's fine. Should be fine. Now, okay. So let's try. So let's refresh, and then if I try, so we need to write explicit, and it's fine. And write some password, which is at least one digit, which is I just written here one uppercase. I just written here, and then one special, which is special. And okay, so it's going, and then I said, okay, this is what we have written. Okay, so the form is now submitting. Okay, so if I miss at least one of the requirements, and then the form will not be submitted. Okay, so so now it's working. Okay, Um, so to recap what you have done, okay, so this is our component. We initialize the username, user password, and then username requirements have long enough and lowercase letters and digits, and then password has a requirement long enough is digit is upper is special. Okay, so we created a username valid function to check the validity, and then based on that we update um, the objects of the name requirements, and then we return that whether both of the conditions are satisfied or not. Okay, so same we'll do here for password. We need to check all the four conditions, and then based on that we need to update the password requirement object, and then also return that whether all four of them are satisfied or not. Okay, and then we call the handle submit, and handle submit will check that okay, if either of them are not true, then it will stop the form to submit. Okay, and then here is our form. So the form has handle submit, and then in action it goes to a server to just check that okay, the form submission is going or not going based on our condition. Okay, so here is our input field, and then where these are the two error condition. Okay, so that we want to render. If this one is not true or this one is not true, then corresponding error will be rendered. Same thing here for password. Okay, there are four error condition and all of them are rendered. Okay, so I hope you understand this, and I'll make this code available in the GitHub repository, and then that's it, and see you in the next video. Thank you very much.